The crystal palace of the Volanthi Empire rose from the purple mountains like a frozen dream. Its walls were made of living crystal that sang when the wind passed through them. For 10,000 years, no human had ever walked inside those walls. Until now. Ambassador Marcus Cole stood in the Great Hall and tried not to stare. Everything around him was beautiful and strange. The floors were smooth like glass but warm under his feet. The ceiling was so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Volanthi guards stood along the walls, their tall insect-like bodies covered in shining armor that matched the crystal around them. Marcus was a simple man from a small town on Earth. He had brown hair that was turning gray at the sides. His eyes were tired but kind. He was not tall or strong or special in any way that aliens would notice. He was just a human, and humans were not impressive to most species in the galaxy. The Volanthi were impressive. They stood 8 feet tall on average. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that came in colors like deep blue and royal purple. They had 4 arms and 4 eyes. 2 of their eyes were large and saw the world clearly. The other 2 were smaller and showed their true feelings to those who knew how to read them. Queen Sevethani sat on her throne at the end of the hall. She was the most beautiful and terrifying creature Marcus had ever seen. Her shell was the color of a sunset, orange and gold and red. A crown of living crystal grew from her head. She watched Marcus with all 4 of her eyes, and he felt like a small animal being studied by something much larger. "You are the human they sent," she said. Her voice was like music and thunder mixed together. "Yes, Your Majesty," Marcus replied. He bowed the way he had been taught. "I am honored to be here." Honored. The Queen made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are here because your people proved useful against the Kyrix swarm. Nothing more. Do not think this makes us friends." Marcus nodded. He understood. The Kyrix were a terrible enemy that ate entire planets. Humanity had helped fight them, and now the Volanthi owed humans a small debt. That debt was Marcus. A single ambassador allowed inside the sacred palace. It was not friendship. It was politics. The first months were difficult. No one talked to Marcus except when they had to. The servants looked at him like he was a strange pet. The guards watched him like he might steal something. He ate alone in his small room in the diplomatic wing. The food was strange and sometimes made his stomach hurt, but he never complained. Marcus spent his days walking through the palace. He was not allowed in many places, but no one stopped him from wandering the public areas. He learned the hallways and the gardens. He talked to servants when they would listen. He asked questions about everything, pretending to be more confused than he really was. People talked more freely to someone they thought was stupid. He learned that the Queen had lost her husband 2 years ago in the war against the Kyrix. He learned that she had 3 young daughters who rarely left their private wing. He learned that the Queen's cousin, Lord Varethus, thought he should be ruling instead of her. He learned which guards were loyal and which ones whispered in corners when they thought no one was watching. Marcus noticed things. It was what humans did. They watched and learned and remembered. It was not a special power. Any human could do it. But to the Volanthi, who relied on their telepathy and their technology, simple observation was almost invisible. One day, Marcus was walking in the garden when he heard laughter. It was a strange sound in the quiet palace. He followed it and found 3 young Volanthi playing near a fountain. They were small, only about 5 feet tall, and their shells were soft and bright with youth. They were the princesses. The oldest one saw him first. She stood up straight and tried to look royal. "You are the human," she said. Her name was Kathari, and she was 12 years old in human terms. "I am," Marcus said. He smiled gently. "And you are the princess who reads too many adventure stories. The servants talk about how you stay up late with your books. Catherine's smaller eyes went wide with surprise. No one had ever spoken to her like that. "How do you know that?" "I listen," Marcus said simply. The middle princess, Yavani, stepped forward. She was 10 and very serious for her age. "Humans are supposed to be boring," she said. "The tutors told us you have no special abilities." "That is true," Marcus agreed. "No telepathy, no venom, no armor. Just this." He pointed to his head. "And this." He pointed to his heart. The youngest princess pushed past her sisters. She was only 6, small and curious, with a shell the same sunset colors as her mother. "What is your world like?" she asked. "Is it true you have only one son? Is it true your water falls from the sky?" Marcus laughed. It was a warm sound that echoed in the crystal garden. "Yes, to both." "Would you like to hear about it?" The princesses looked at each other. Then they sat down on the grass and looked up at him with 8 curious eyes. Marcus told them about Earth. He told them about oceans so big you could not see the other side. He told them about mountains covered in white snow. He told them about rain and how children on Earth would run outside and dance in it. He told them about dogs and cats and how humans kept animals just for friendship, not for any useful purpose. The princesses were amazed. They had never heard anyone talk like this. Their tutors taught them facts in history and politics. This human told them stories. After that day, the princesses asked for Marcus whenever they could. The queen was surprised when her daughters requested that the human ambassador be allowed to visit them. She was more surprised when she saw how happy they were around him. They laughed in ways she had not heard since their father died. So Queen Sevethani allowed it. She did not understand why her daughters liked the human so much. He was plain and soft and had no special qualities. But he made her children smile, and that was worth more than politics. What the queen did not know was that Marcus had started to notice something wrong. There were too many new guards in the palace. Too many servants who watched doorways instead of working. Too many shadows in places that should have been bright. Something bad was coming. Marcus could feel it like a storm on the horizon. And he had already decided that when the storm came, he would make sure the princesses were safe. It was not his mission. It was not his duty. But they were children, and someone had to protect them. That was enough reason for a human. The Eve of Crystalline Moons was the most important celebration in the Volanthi calendar. It happened once every 3 years when all 7 moons lined up in the sky. The whole palace was filled with music and dancing and ceremony. Every servant, every guard, every noble was busy with their duties. Marcus stood at his window and watched the moons rise. They were beautiful, each one a different color, hanging in the dark sky like jewels. The Crystal Palace sang as the moonlight passed through it, creating music that had no words but somehow touched the heart. He should have been sleeping. Humans needed sleep at different times than Volanthi, and the palace schedule did not match his body's needs. But Marcus had learned to stay awake during Volanthi night. He had learned to watch and wait while others slept. Something felt wrong tonight. He could not explain it. There was no evidence, no proof. Just a feeling in his gut that humans had learned to trust over thousands of years of survival. The feeling that a predator was nearby. The first scream came from 3 wings away. Marcus moved before he could think about what he was doing. He did not grab his communication device. He did not try to call for help. He did not run toward the exits or the guard stations. He ran toward the children's wing. The crystal halls magnified sound in strange ways. The Volanthi hearing was very good, but they depended on their telepathy more than their ears. Marcus had neither telepathy nor great hearing, but in these acoustic corridors, even human ears could hear things from far away. More screams. The clash of weapons. the deep buzzing sound the Lanthi made when they were afraid. Marcus ran faster. His bare feet made no sound on the crystal floor. The Lanthi feet had hard claws that clicked against the surface, announcing every step. Human feet were soft and silent. Another small advantage that no one had thought about. He reached the children's wing and found chaos. 2 guards lay on the floor, their shells cracked and dark. A servant was hiding behind a pillar, her forearms wrapped around herself in terror. The door to the princess's room was still sealed, but Marcus could hear voices on the other side. "Open in the name of Lord Varethus." Someone shouted. "The queen has fallen. Open now, and you will not be harmed." Marcus did not hesitate. He moved to a side entrance that he had discovered weeks ago. It was meant for servants bringing food, and was too small for adult Volanthi to use comfortably. Marcus squeezed through easily. The princesses were awake. Kithari stood in front of her sisters, holding a ceremonial blade that was too big for her hands. Ivani was trying to contact someone on a communication device that had been jammed. Little Moth, the youngest, was crying silently, her smaller eyes leaking tears that glowed faintly in the dark. "Marcus!" Kithari lowered her blade when she saw him. Relief and fear mixed on her face. "What is happening?" "They said Mother has fallen." "They said." "There is no time," Marcus said. His voice was calm and steady, the way adults needed to sound when children were scared. "We need to leave now. Right now. Do you trust me?" The 3 princesses looked at each other. They had known this human for only a few months. He was not their species. He had no power, no weapons, no special abilities. But he had told them stories and made them laugh, and never once treated them like they were stupid or weak. "We trust you," Kithari said. Marcus nodded. "Then follow me. Stay quiet. Do exactly what I say." He led them to the servant entrance. Kithari went first, then Moth, then Ivani. Marcus went last, pulling the hidden panel closed behind them. They could hear the main door being forced open. Angry voices filled the room they had just left. "They are gone. Search everywhere." Marcus put his finger to his lips. The children understood. They moved through the narrow passage in complete silence. The palace was in chaos. Through the crystal walls, they could see shapes running and fighting. They could hear orders being shouted and weapons firing. Lord Varethus had planned his coup well. He had waited for the one night when everyone was distracted. He had placed his loyal soldiers in key positions. He had blocked all communications to the outside. But he had not planned for a human. Marcus knew the palace better than any outsider should. He had spent months learning every corridor, every shortcut, every forgotten passage. The servants had told him things without realizing how important the information was. The guards had ignored him when he wandered into places he should not have been. He was just a human, after all. Harmless and unimportant. "This way," he whispered. He led the children through a thermal vent that connected the lower levels of the palace. It was warm inside, almost hot. The Lanthi did not like such temperatures. Their cold-blooded bodies became slow and uncomfortable in heat. But humans could adapt. Humans could survive in deserts and jungles and frozen wastelands. A warm tunnel was nothing. The princesses struggled but did not complain. Their shells were sensitive to the heat, but they trusted Marcus. They followed him through the darkness, one small hand holding onto the person in front of them. "Where are we going?" Ivani whispered. "Somewhere safe," Marcus said. "Somewhere they will never think to look." They crawled for what felt like hours. The sounds of fighting grew distant. The heat slowly faded as they moved away from the thermal core. Finally, Marcus pushed open a small hatch and helped the children climb out. They were in the diplomatic wing. The fighting had not reached here yet. The rebels had focused on capturing the queen and securing the main halls. The diplomats' quarters were considered unimportant. Marcus led the princesses to his room. It was small and plain compared to the rest of the palace. The walls were solid metal instead of crystal, built to human specifications. The door had a human-style lock that could not be opened with Volanti telepathy or pheromones. The temperature inside was warmer than the rest of the palace, uncomfortable for cold-blooded species. "Inside," Marcus said. Quickly, the princesses hurried in. Marcus followed and sealed the door behind them. He pushed his bed against it, then added his desk and every piece of furniture he could move. It would not stop a determined attacker, but it would slow them down. "Are we safe here?" Moth asked. Her voice was tiny and scared. Marcus knelt down so he could look her in all four of her eyes. "We are as safe as I can make us," he said honestly. He never lied to children. "Now we wait. We stay quiet. And we hope." Kithari sat down heavily on the floor. "Mother," she said. "They said she fell. Is she dead?" "I do not know," Marcus admitted. "But your mother is the strongest person I have ever met. I do not think she falls easily." Outside, they could hear distant sounds of the coup continuing. But in the small human room, surrounded by walls that the enemy would not think to search, 3 alien princesses huddled close to the only creature in the galaxy who had thought to save them. "Will you tell us a story?" Moth asked quietly. "Like you always do?" Marcus smiled despite everything. "Yes," he said. "I will tell you about brave people who hid in the dark and waited for dawn. And dawn always comes." He began to speak, his voice soft and steady, as the night of whispers continued outside. Lord Varethus stood in the throne room and smiled. The crystal walls reflected his image back at him 1,000 times. He was tall even for a Volanti, with a shell the color of deep ocean water. For years he had waited in the shadows, watching his cousins sit on the throne that should have been his. Now finally, the throne was within his reach. Queen Sevethani knelt before him, her 4 arms bound behind her back. Her crown of living crystal had been torn from her head. Her guards lay dead around her. But even now, defeated and captured, she did not look afraid. Her large eyes stared at Varethus with nothing but cold hatred. "Where are your daughters?" Varethus demanded. "Tell me, and I will make your death quick." "I do not know," the queen said. Her voice was steady. "And if I did know, I would never tell you." Varethus made an angry buzzing sound. He turned to his lieutenant, a scarred soldier named Threxis. "Find them. Search every room, every passage, every hiding place. I want those children found before morning." Threxis nodded and left quickly. He had served Lord Varethus for many years. He knew every corner of the palace. He knew every traditional hiding place that the royal family might use. He knew the secret passages built for emergencies and the sacred sanctuaries protected by ancient law. But there was one thing Threxis did not know. He did not know about the human. In his small room in the diplomatic wing, Marcus listened to the sounds of searching. Boots marched through distant corridors. Doors were broken open. Soldiers shouted at servants and demanded answers. The search was getting closer, but it had not reached the diplomatic wing yet. The princesses sat in a circle on the floor. They had stopped crying. Fear had given way to exhaustion and then to a strange calm. They watched Marcus with their 8 young eyes and waited for him to tell them what to do. "Why did you learn so much about the palace?" Kithari asked quietly. "You walked everywhere. You talked to everyone. The servants thought you were just being friendly, but you were learning, were you not?" Marcus nodded. There was no point in hiding it now. "Humans are curious," he said. "We cannot help it. When we are in a new place, we want to understand it. We want to know every path and every doorway. It is how we survived on Earth. We were not the strongest or the fastest animals. We survived because we learned. The tutor said humans were simple creatures, Yvonne said. They said you had no special abilities. They were right, Marcus said. We have no telepathy to read minds. No venom to kill enemies. No armor to protect us. No wings to fly away from danger. We are just soft, weak creatures who learn to use our brains instead. He smiled slightly. Sometimes that is enough. Little Moth crawled closer to him. I am scared, she whispered. I want Mother. Marcus put his arm around her. Human warmth was strange to Volanthi children, but Moth did not pull away. She pressed herself against his side and let his body heat comfort her. I know, Marcus said gently. Being scared is normal. Even the bravest heroes in human stories were scared. The difference is that they were scared and still kept going. Tell us about them, Moth said. Tell us about the brave humans. So Marcus told them? He told them about Thermopylae, where 300 warriors stood against an army of millions. They knew they would die, but they stood anyway because some things were worth dying for. He told them about a woman named Harriet who was born a slave. She escaped to freedom, but instead of staying safe, she went back again and again to lead others out of darkness. She never lost a single person she was trying to save. He told them about Anne, a young girl who hid in a small space for 2 years while enemies searched for her outside. She was afraid every day, but she kept a diary and found beauty in small things and never gave up hope. He told them about ordinary people who did extraordinary things. Soldiers who jumped on grenades to save their friends. Parents who lifted impossible weights to rescue their children. Strangers who ran toward danger to help people they had never met. Why do humans do these things? Cathari asked. Her voice was filled with wonder. You have no telepathy to share emotions. You cannot feel what others feel. Why do you risk yourselves for strangers? Marcus thought about the question seriously. I do not know if I can explain it, he finally said. There is something inside humans that sees suffering and wants to stop it. We see someone in danger, and our bodies move before our minds can think. It is not logical. It is not smart. But it is who we are. Outside, the search continued. Marcus could hear soldiers getting closer. But they were not coming directly to the diplomatic wing. They were checking all the traditional Volanthi spaces first. The crystal chambers, the sacred pools, the ancient tunnels. Places that would make sense to Volanthi thinking. They are not coming here, Yvonne observed. She was smart enough to understand what was happening. They do not think we would hide with the human. No, Marcus agreed. To them, I am unimportant. I have no power, no weapons, no political value. Why would 3 princesses hide with someone like me? He shrugged. Sometimes being underestimated is the best protection. The hours passed slowly. Marcus kept telling stories when the children needed comfort. He kept them fed with the human food he had in his room. Strange things like protein bars and dried fruit that the princesses had never tasted before. The food was bland but safe for Volanthi to eat. He let them rest against him when they were tired. Volanthi did not usually touch others outside their family, but these children were scared and far from their mother. Human warmth was strange but comforting. One by one, they dozed off, their breathing becoming slow and steady. Marcus did not sleep. He sat with his back against the barricaded door and listened. His body was tired, but his mind was alert. This was something else humans could do, push past exhaustion when necessary. The body wanted to rest, but the will could keep it going. He heard soldiers pass by outside once, twice, 3 times. Each time, his heart beat faster. Each time he prepared himself to fight, even though he knew he could not win against armed Volanthi warriors. But each time, The footsteps continued past his door without stopping. The diplomatic quarters were boring. They were built to human standards, which meant no crystal, no traditional architecture, no connection to the palace's sensor network. The rooms were practically invisible to Volanthi technology. Why would anyone search there? As the night grew longer, Marcus thought about his life. He had grown up on a farm in Iowa. He had studied languages in college because he loved the way different peoples expressed the same ideas in different ways. He had joined the diplomatic corps because he wanted to understand aliens, not fight them. He had never expected to be here, sitting in the dark, protecting children who were not his species, waiting for enemies who wanted to kill them. It was not the life he had planned. But sometimes life did not go according to plan. Sometimes you ended up exactly where you needed to be. Moth stirred in her sleep. She made a small sound of distress, and Marcus gently rubbed her back until she settled down. Even in sleep, she reached for his hand and held it tightly. "Do not worry, little one," Marcus whispered. "I will keep you safe until morning. I promise." Outside, the search continued. Inside, 3 princesses slept peacefully in the one place their enemies would never think to look. Lord Varethus was losing patience. The 7 moons had passed their peak and were now sinking toward the horizon. Dawn was coming, and the princesses were still missing. How is this possible? He shouted at Threxus. His voice echoed through the throne room. "We have searched every chamber, every tunnel, every sanctuary. 3 children cannot simply disappear." Threxus kept his head low. He had never seen his lord so angry. "We have searched everywhere, my lord. Every traditional hiding place. Every secret passage. The children are not there." "Then search again. Search places that are not traditional. Search the servant quarters. Search the storage rooms. Search everywhere." "My lord, we have searched those places as well. The only areas we have not checked are the outer walls and the diplomatic wing." Varethus waved his hand dismissively. "The outer walls are impossible. No Volanthi could survive the cold out there for more than a few minutes. And the diplomatic wing? That is where the human lives. Why would the princesses go there?" Threxus hesitated. "Should we check anyway, my lord? Just to be certain?" "The human is nothing," Varethus said firmly. "He has no power, no weapons, no importance. The children barely know him. They would never think to seek shelter with such a creature. Focus on the real hiding places." In his small room, Marcus heard none of this conversation, but he could guess what was happening. The rebels were searching everywhere that made sense to Volanthi minds. They were thinking like Volanthi, hiding like Volanthi would hide, running to places where Volanthi would run. They were not thinking like humans. The princesses had woken up, but stayed quiet. They understood the danger. Even Little Moth, who was only 6 years old, knew that making noise could get them killed. They sat close together and waited. "How long must we stay here?" Yvonne asked in a whisper. "Until help comes," Marcus replied. "Or until the danger passes. What if help does not come?" Marcus looked at her seriously. "Then I will find another way. I promise you, I will not let them take you." Kizari watched his face as he spoke. She had learned to read human expressions over the past months. Humans showed their emotions differently than Volanthi. Their faces moved in strange ways, and their single pair of eyes changed somehow when they felt things strongly. "You really mean that," she said slowly. "You would fight for us. You would die for us. Yes. But we are not your people. We are not even your species. Why would you do this?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that felt so natural to him. "On Earth," he finally said, "we have a belief. We believe that all children are sacred. Not just our own children. All of them. When we see a child in danger, something inside us screams that we must help. It does not matter whose child it is. It does not matter if we are scared or weak or outnumbered. We must try. That is strange, Yvonne said. Other species protect only their own offspring. I know. Humans are strange creatures. Marcus smiled slightly. We form connections that make no logical sense. We love people we have just met. We cry for strangers who are suffering on the other side of the world. We are not rational. But I think that is what makes us human. The hours continued to pass. Marcus told more stories to keep the children calm. He told them about his childhood on the farm, about the animals he had cared for and the crops he had helped grow. He told them about his grandmother, who had survived a great war and taught him that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to keep going despite fear. He taught them human games that could be played quietly. They played rock, paper, scissors until the princesses understood the rules. They played the game where you try to make the other person laugh without making any noise. Moth won that game easily. Her silent giggles were contagious. Outside, the search grew more desperate. Varithis had sent soldiers to every corner of the palace. He had interrogated servants and threatened nobles. He had even checked the ancient tombs beneath the palace, though no living Volanti would ever hide there out of respect for the dead. Nothing. The princesses had vanished like ghosts. Varithis began to worry. Without the princesses, his hold on power was weak. The queen was still alive. He needed her to legitimize his rule. But many noble families were loyal to the royal bloodline. As long as the princesses lived, they were a threat to his throne. Perhaps they escaped the palace entirely, one of his advisors suggested. Impossible. We sealed every exit within minutes of the attack. No one could have gotten out. Then they must still be inside. Obviously, they are still inside. But where? The advisor had no answer. Neither did anyone else. In the small human room, Moth had fallen asleep again. She was curled against Marcus's side, her 4 small arms wrapped around his waist. Kithari and Yvonne sat nearby, too nervous to sleep, but too tired to stay fully alert. Marcus, Kithari said quietly, if they find us, what will you do? Marcus had been thinking about this question all night. He had no weapon except a metal bar from his broken chair. He had no armor except his own body. Against trained Volanti warriors, he would last maybe 10 seconds. I will fight, he said simply. I will give you time to run. There is an emergency hatch in the ceiling that leads to the roof. From there you can signal for help. You would die. Probably. Kithari stared at him for a long moment. I do not understand humans, she finally said. You are so soft and weak. Any creature in the galaxy could kill you. But you do not act like prey. You act like predators. Why? Marcus thought about her question. It was something he had wondered about himself many times. Maybe it is because we know we are weak, he said. We know we can die easily. So we decided long ago that we would not let fear control us. If we are going to die anyway, we might as well die doing something that matters. That is the most human thing I have ever heard, Yvonne said. Is it? I suppose it is. Marcus looked at the 2 older princesses with warmth in his eyes. Your mother is very lucky. She has 3 wonderful daughters who are brave and smart and kind. Whatever happens, I want you to remember that. Before Kithari could respond, they all heard something that made their hearts stop. Footsteps outside the door. Not passing by this time. Stopping. Right outside. Marcus rose silently. He picked up his metal bar and positioned himself in front of the children. His body was tense, ready to move. His eyes were fixed on the door. The footsteps paused. There was a long moment of silence. Then, slowly, the footsteps moved away. Marcus let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. The children stayed frozen for another minute before they dared to relax. "That was close," Giovanni whispered. "Yes," Marcus agreed. "But close is not caught. We are still safe." Through the small window, he could see the sky beginning to lighten. The 7 moons were almost gone, sinking below the purple mountains. Dawn was coming. "Just a little longer," Marcus said softly. "Hold on just a little longer." He did not know if help was coming. He did not know what the new day would bring. But he had kept the children safe through the long night, and he would keep them safe until his last breath. That was what humans did. The first ray of sunlight touched the crystal palace and made it sing. The ancient walls vibrated with frequencies that had greeted every dawn for 10,000 years. It was a beautiful sound full of hope and new beginnings. Lord Varithus heard none of it. He sat on the stolen throne and felt nothing but cold fear. The night had passed, and the princesses were still missing. His victory was incomplete. His power was fragile. Then the alarms started. "My lord!" Threxus burst into the throne room. "Ships! Human ships are approaching." Varithus jumped to his feet. "That is impossible. The communication arrays are blocked. No one could have called for help. They did not need to call. The humans noticed the communication blackout on their own. They sent a battle cruiser to investigate. The human ship Perseverance had been orbiting a nearby moon as part of a routine patrol. When the palace went dark, the captain had tried to make contact. When there was no response, she had made a decision that violated 17 different diplomatic protocols. She had sent help anyway. The first dropships landed in the outer courtyards. Human marines poured out, their strange soft bodies covered in hard armor that hummed with energy. They moved differently than Volanti soldiers, faster, more chaotic, harder to predict. They communicated with short barking sounds and hand signals that made no sense to their enemies. They were terrifying. The rebels fought back, but they had not prepared for this. They had planned for a quiet coup, not a military assault. They had expected to win and establish control before anyone outside the palace knew what had happened. They had not expected humans to ignore all the rules and show up uninvited. Varithus tried to use the queen as a hostage, but the humans did not negotiate the way he expected. They did not stop to talk. They did not wait for demands. They simply kept coming, room by room, corridor by corridor, with cold efficiency. When the loyalist Volanti guards saw what was happening, they rose up against their captors. Servants who had been hiding joined the fight. The rebellion that had seemed so successful just hours ago was crumbling like sand in a storm. In his small room, Marcus heard the sounds of battle change. The shooting was moving away from them now, not toward them. He heard human voices for the first time in months, shouting orders in English that sounded like music to his ears. "What is happening?" Cathari asked. "I think help has arrived," Marcus said. He allowed himself to smile. "I think we are going to be okay." It took another hour for the palace to be secured. Varithus was captured trying to escape through a hidden passage that humans should not have known about. The marine who found him just smiled and said, "We asked the servants." They were happy to help. The queen was freed. She had been beaten but not broken. When they cut her bonds, she did not cry or collapse. She stood straight and asked one question. "My daughters?" No one knew the answer. The search began again, but this time it was different. This time, humans were helping. They asked different questions and looked in different places. They talked to servants and guards and anyone who would listen. Within minutes, someone said, "The human ambassador. Has anyone seen him since the attack?" Captain Chun of the Perseverance led the team that went to the diplomatic wing. She was a small woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She knocked on Marcus's door and called out in English, Ambassador Cole? This is Captain Chun of the Perseverance. Are you in there? Inside, Marcus felt something release in his chest. He had been holding himself together all night, staying strong for the children. Now, finally, he could let go. Yes, he called back. I am here, and I have some very important guests with me. It took a few minutes to move the barricade. When the door finally opened, Captain Chun saw something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. 3 alien princesses were huddled behind a human man in wrinkled clothes. The youngest one was still holding his hand. The oldest one was standing protectively beside him. And the man himself looked exhausted but calm, like a soldier who had finished a long watch. Ambassador Cole, Chun said carefully. Are these the princesses everyone has been looking for? Yes, Captain. They are tired and scared, but they are safe. The news spread through the palace like fire. The princesses were alive. They had been hidden in the humans' quarters all night. The human had protected them. Queen Sevethani came to the diplomatic wing herself. She walked quickly, her damaged crown forgotten, her royal dignity abandoned. She was not a queen in that moment. She was a mother who had been terrified that she would never see her children again. Moth saw her first. Mother! She cried and ran into the queen's 4 arms. Then Kithari and Yavani were there too, and the queen was holding all 3 of them, making a sound that humans could not make but could understand perfectly. It was the sound of relief so deep that it hurt. Marcus stood back and watched. His job was done. He was just an ambassador again, unimportant and unremarkable. But then the queen looked at him. She set her daughters down gently and walked toward him. She was tall, nearly 8 feet, and she towered over him. Her 4 eyes studied his face, his tired, plain, human face. You saved my children, she said. I kept them safe, Marcus replied. Anyone would have done the same. No, not anyone. My own people did not think to look in your quarters. They did not think you were important enough. The queen's voice was thick with emotion. But you were important enough to risk your life for children who were not your own. They were scared, Marcus said simply. They needed help. That was enough. The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she did something that had not been done in 3,000 years of Volanthi history. She bowed her head to a human low and deep, the bow of equals. I underestimated your kind, she said. The galaxy underestimates your kind. You have no telepathy, no venom, no armor. But you have something else. Something that I do not have a word for. Marcus thought about how to explain it. He thought about all the stories he had told the children during the long night. He thought about Thermopylae and Harriet and Anne and all the ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. We call it art, he finally said. It is the thing that makes us run toward danger instead of away from it. The thing that makes us protect strangers as if they were family. It is not logical or sensible, but it is what makes us human. The queen nodded slowly. Heart, she repeated. I will remember that word. 6 months later, the Treaty of Crystalline Moons was signed. It was the first military alliance between the Volanthi sovereignty and the human coalition. Historians would argue for centuries about why it happened. They would point to strategic interests and economic benefits and political necessities. But those who were there knew the truth. The treaty was signed because a human sat in the dark with 3 scared children and told them stories until dawn. Because he stood ready to die for people who were not his people. Because when asked why, he simply said that they were small and scared and someone should help them. The Volanthi had many words for honor and duty and loyalty. But they had learned a new word that night, a human word that captured something they had never understood before. Heart and hearts. They learned were worth more than all the crystal palaces in the galaxy. Moth, who grew up to be a great diplomat herself, would often tell the story of that night. She would tell people about the human who smelled strange and felt warm, and told her stories about a blue world with one yellow sun. He was not strong, she would say. He was not powerful. He was just a human. But he had something that made him more brave than any warrior I have ever known. People would ask her what that something was, and she would smile and say, "Heart. Humans call it heart. And they have more of it than any species in the galaxy." Some years later, a statue was erected in the palace gardens. It showed a human man with 3 small Volanthi children gathered around him. The plaque at the base read, "Sometimes being human is enough." Ambassador Marcus Cole lived a long and quiet life. He never thought of himself as a hero. He had just done what any human would do. But maybe that was the point. Maybe that was always the point.